Hello everyone and welcome back to another video with On Point Politics. And today we are doing the first episode of the On Point podcast. Now, if you're going to ask what is that? Well, basically what I'm doing is I'm kind of changing things up a little bit, right? I want to be able to continue the show after the presidential election, and there's going to be no use for me to just keep talking about the 2028 election if it's 4 years away right after the 2024 election. And so I'm kind of going to start branching out and doing a little bit more actual news. Now, today's going to be a little bit, softer on the material, a little bit less intense. We're going to be talking about 2024, the 13 keys, and we're going to be talking about Mark Zuckerberg possibly being for Trump and the whole MrBeast situation with his friend who happens to be transgender. Stuff kind of went down with that. And the reason why I'm going to talk about MrBeast is that he's actually talked about having presidential aspirations. And so everybody who is in here, I think it's going to be important for you guys to know about that as well, and kind of the whole sphere around that too. But that'll be at the end of the stream. Make sure, if you are in here, to hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe if you are new. Because guys, please do not please don't watch the video and not like the stream, because what's going to happen is YouTube is not going to pick up on the algorithm for the video, because the view to like ratio won't be as close to each other. And so that's definitely something I would appreciate. If you guys would be able to like the video, I would greatly appreciate that. And so now going into this, we basically see here that Donald Trump right now against Kamala Harris is doing pretty good. I mean, he's ahead by 3 points. Now, he did lose a little bit of a lead. I mean, this Marist poll kind of got the race to be a little bit closer and definitely set him back in my election prediction video. And she did actually gain a point in favorability on civics, which is also pretty interesting as well. I thought it was pretty fascinating that she actually gained a point. So yes, the race theoretically has gotten closer. New Jersey is no longer in the Republican column for Donald Trump as of this video. Now, looking at the electoral map, just really quick, before we move on to other things, effectively, Ohio, Iowa, Texas, Florida, those states are now in the safe Republican column, unlike last year's where they were a little bit more competitive. And we see here, California is in that likely margin, so is Hawaii. Washington is in that column as well. D.C., Maryland, Massachusetts, Vermont, New York, Delaware, Connecticut, Rhode Island. We have the Rust Belt going very easily to Donald Trump. Nebraska is second. You have Maine's first going there. North Carolina going red, as well as Georgia. North Carolina is actually over 15 points in my latest forecast. We also have likely Arizona with likely Nevada, including lean Oregon, lean Colorado, lean Illinois, and lean New Jersey, all for Kamala Harris. Minnesota, New Mexico, Virginia are going to Donald Trump. Meanwhile, Maine at large and New Hampshire are in that tilt Republican column for the former president, as of right now, getting him 347 electoral college votes to Harris's 191. She has improved in the national popular vote by about 2 points or so in the forecast as of right now. So she's definitely gained a bit. However, I do not believe this is going to be long lasting. And I'm going to be reading chat now really quick here. Flamey Bird Drake says, on point, I'm a bit worried about the betting odds for Kamala Harris against Trump. Should I be worried? I don't necessarily think you should be worried. We have here, good evening, everyone. Harris should resign. Harris is getting a bump from accepting the nomination. This is very common. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, this is basically her DNC bump. I mean, the roll call is on August 1st. I don't think people realize, but this is technically the DNC bump, pretty much. And so that's why right now it's a little bit, iffy with this whole thing. Everybody's saying, oh, Harris, it can beat Trump, And, she could gain as time goes on. At the end of the day, she is a different candidate than Joe Biden. And if she were to catch up to Trump in favorability, that would definitely put the race a lot more competitive. That would definitely get the race a lot closer. States like, basically the Rust Belt would get a little bit closer. New Mexico would go black, blue. Maine at large would be likely Democrat already, as well as Illinois. And we'd probably even have New Hampshire in that likely Democrat column. So, she could catch up. It's just the data for her is just looking really bad. I mean, she's just not looking good. I mean, she'd basically have to be leading in the aggregate by about 5 points and have to be ahead of Trump by about 5 points in favorability to even have a semi-competitive election. And even then, the popular vote is actually exactly tied. And Donald Trump is still winning the state of Wisconsin. He is still winning Pennsylvania. He is still winning Michigan. So it's like, I mean, at the end of the day, it is not looking great for Harris right now. I mean, if they really wanted a shot to win, they should have, gone with a Robert F. Kennedy Jr. They should have gone with somebody else, because this is not a good look at all. This is 2016 2.0. Harris will not win the Rust Belt. That's the thing that they don't understand, is that Harris is not going to perform well in the Midwest. She is not doing well. And that's why I'm actually more confident with Illinois probably being under a 5-point win for Harris, because she's going to underperform in those rural counties by a lot, especially the ones that border Indiana and Iowa. She's going to underperform there by quite a bit because she has a very big lack of Midwestern appeal. We have Charzy for 2. Thank you for the 2. Do you think Arizona and North Carolina and Georgia are gone for reps after 2024? I mean, I would have said that Arizona and Georgia would have been gone for Democrats, but I actually think now, based off the way that Trump is gaining, African American and Hispanic voters, I would say they're definitely not gone. Are they going to be competitive? Yes. I think 2028 is going to be a year where you're going to have a closer cycle. That I do think is actually going to be the case. I think you are going to have a closer cycle in 2024, or excuse me, in 2028. I do believe you're going to have a lot more of a closer election that year. So that's definitely going to be something very interesting. But I think right now Donald Trump is just too high in favorability. That's what people are not getting. They're like, oh, polarization. But it's really just because Hillary Clinton had a higher favorable than Trump, and Biden had a higher favorable than Trump. Basically almost the same spread that Clinton did, except Biden actually had a point higher. Hillary was 5 points more popular than Trump, and then Biden was about 6 points more popular than Trump. And so it's kind of like, okay, well, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, now to say the election's going to be close if during those times the cycle's really close. And now Trump is actually gaining in favorability. She's actually gaining in favorability Trump is actually gaining favorability after the assassination attempt. Quinnipiac had him at 46%. That's the highest they've ever had him at in history. So that's also a really big deal. Guys, make sure to hit the like button on the stream. That would be greatly appreciated if you'd be able to do so. She is not black. She's just a person of color, whatever that means. Why does everyone hate Harris? She's literally the first black woman as VP and is making history. Okay, the reason why people don't like her is because she comes across as extremely disingenuous and she panders quite a bit. And I'm just going to say this. At the end of the day, obviously I'm not African American, but I feel like I understand this well enough to speak about this. Kamala Harris is not, at the end of the day, I'm going to just keep it real. The reason why she's not going to do good with some subsections of the African American community is because she wouldn't get reparations. I mean, I'm just being serious. I mean, her mom is Indian and her dad is Jamaican. It's actually came out, I think today, that her father basically descended from an Irish slave owner, which, I mean, that is a pretty terrible thing, because you already know what that means about her dynasty. Something pretty bad happened along the way. But at the end of the day, I mean, it like, she wouldn't get reparations. And so it's like, I'm not saying that to be facetious, but for her to kind of like throw herself out there and say that she is an African American that can identify with the African American culture, I think is a little disingenuous, to be honest. And it's like in 2016 when she got elected to the Senate in California, she was the first Indian American senator. And yes, obviously people will be like, oh, but she wasn't the first black senator, obviously, because there probably was one before her, which is fine. But then when she ran for VP in 2020, why wasn't she the first Indian American VP? She could have just stuck with that and it would have been fine. But she likes to play this race card thing, and I think that's really disingenuous to the electorate, and that is not gonna work out for her whatsoever. I think her Rust Belt appeal is gonna be really bad, to the point where she probably is gonna do a lot worse, and she may actually do slightly better in the Sun Belt, in my opinion, but that's not really even saying much. Charzy for 2. When do swing states like Texas, Kansas, Delaware, New Jersey become swing? I mean, I'm not sure when that would happen. Texas, I'm going to be serious. If Republicans keep up the trend with Hispanic voters, they're going to be just fine. They're literally going to be completely fine. If Republicans hold their gains with Hispanic voters in Texas, they will more than likely keep the state for a pretty long time. Like, a Democrat would have to be extremely popular to even win the state. Kansas, I think that could actually narrow up before Texas, to be honest with you, because you have a more of a white suburbanite kind of electorate there. Delaware, I think that could actually narrow up at some point pretty soon, and I think New Jersey can too. I think all those states are going to become swing states at some point. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens with that, but that's definitely going to be, those will all become swing states at some point. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the 13 keys, because we've had this system where, Alan Lichtman is predicting that Harris is supposedly going to win the election based on where he has the keys right now. That's pretty much where everything is landing, right? And what I think is very fascinating about this is that right now, I mean, he has the no third party and no social unrest leaning true, which I think objectively these keys, I mean, I just made a video about this, but I think these keys objectively have to be false. It doesn't make any sense for Allen to have third parties true. And he said, oh, but the third parties can't combine for over 10%. It has to be one candidate that gets over 10%. And so what doesn't make any sense to me is, okay, well, if your model is assuming that all third parties are going to hurt the incumbent, then why aren't you accounting for all the third parties adding up to over 10%? It doesn't make any sense. If, for example, Vivek ran third party this cycle, he would probably hurt Donald Trump because he is a conservative candidate. But based on Alan Lichtman's model, party affiliation doesn't really matter. It would just end up becoming a false key if Vivek were to basically become over 10%. And so, yeah, I saw the key 3. Yeah, I put it false now. Thanks. I missed that. But to me, it's like, well, if he would have had that false for Vivek, even though that would have objectively hurt Donald Trump, and then he would actually get the election wrong. Because if Sorry, guys. If a third party were to run that's Republican and he put this false, it would actually make him inaccurate in predicting a Trump victory if Vivek were to really pull over 10%. Now, it doesn't make any sense for him to leave this true if all the third party candidates, which he is assuming are going to hurt all incumbent parties. It doesn't make any sense to say, oh, Kennedy by himself has to pull over 10%. That makes zero sense. And then the social unrest key, funny enough, there's actually a Palestine protest going on literally in the Capitol right now. A bunch of Palestine protesters, I think, broke into the Capitol. So it's like they literally just basically went in there and they're now protesting. I mean, and on top of that, with the near assassination attempt, sorry guys, the near assassination attempt of Donald Trump, I feel like it's not genuine analysis. I feel like both of these keys have to be false right now. And if he doesn't flip these keys, he's going to end up getting the election wrong. I mean, it's just the truth, because if he leaves these true, which are really the only keys he basically hasn't decided on, he's going to basically get this wrong if he leaves those true. He will get the election wrong if he leaves those true. And so that's really what we're looking at here. We've had unrest in this country for 4 years now. Yeah, I know, but that's just the way that it works. I mean, with this guy, yeah, all the keys that you see filled in right now are all the keys he's already decided on. And I know, obviously, you could argue the economy keys are false. You could even argue no primary contest is false, because at the end of the day, they just ousted their own incumbent president. So it's like, you could even argue that's false. You could argue no scandal's false. The only one that I would say is true is uncharismatic challenger, and that's only because he states that a candidate has to be over 60% in favorability to get this key. And so it's like, yeah, he probably ends up getting Donald Trump would not get this key, because whether you like it or not, he does not have over a 60% approval rating. Like, he does not appeal to a wide variety of the electorate. He appeals to about 35 to 45% of the U.S. electorate. Now, he's going to get a lot of people that back him, that disapprove of him but approve of the job he's doing. That may happen this year, especially against somebody like Harris, to be honest with you. And so that's really going to affect Alan Lichtman's prediction. I mean, if he leaves these for Harris, he's really in a lot of trouble, to be honest with you. 95 Netta said, did you really say Palestine protesters broke into the Capitol? What are you talking about? No, there's literally like a bunch of Palestine protesters inside the Capitol like right now. And let's see. And they have the January 6 people in jail. I mean, yeah, it's pretty crazy, but I mean, it is what it is at this point. And so now what we're going to be looking at, is different things, different Twitter posts and stuff like that. I mean, it's not looking good for, either party. This is something I wanted to talk about because this is really big. The Culinary Workers Union in Nevada, which has over 60,000 members in Las Vegas, just endorsed Trump's no tax on policy, or no tax on tips policy. This almost guarantees that Nevada will go to Donald Trump. The union has previously endorsed Democrats like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. So this is a big deal, actually, because this is a huge deal, because they've endorsed, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, to go ahead. They basically used to endorse them, but now you have the Culinary Workers Union basically going ahead and endorsing Donald Trump. And if we look at the 2020 results, right, we could look at these. If you look at Nevada, there is a decent amount of people in Clark County, and I mean, this is where Las Vegas is, and 60,000 votes can narrow up the state quite a bit. That alone actually wins Donald Trump the state. If he were to net those at least 40,000 votes, he would practically end up gaining a decent amount there. And if we look, in chat, we'll basically see On Point Politics, what is your opinion on the Reuters poll that has +4 for Harris? Well, the thing with that is, here's the thing with those polls. I mean, I was going to get to them now. You see, I have it pulled up right here, the Reuters thing. First of all, Biden was leading in a lot of polls leading up to now anyways, like the post drop. I mean, he was already leading in a lot of polls there. And we even see a Marist poll that has Trump up by 1. And so the main issue with those polls is that they have really big Democrat samples. And that's what's going on right now. Democrats are, enthused about a new candidate because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, I mean, Kamala Harris is going to energize the far left. I mean, she was rated a more liberal senator than Bernie Sanders, for crying out loud. But unfortunately, I mean, that's just what's going to happen, except the problem is there are voters that overall are just not necessarily, yes, there are voters that are enthused for Harris, on the far left, but she's going to crash and burn with independent voters. And what they're doing is pollsters that are trying to push Harris, the mainstream media and far left liberal pollsters, they're not going to weigh their samples properly. They're just not going to weigh them by party, which is how you should do it if you have a really bad response bias, but they're not weighing their polls properly, and that's why you see Harris being up in a couple polls or even competitive with Trump, which wouldn't really be correct because they're favorable ratings. Donald Trump right now is 6 points ahead of her in favorability, and if you were to apply third-party sentiment, that kind of gives you an 8 or 9 point victory in the popular vote, which is where I actually have my model right now. My model actually has a 9.6 percentage point victory. So again, not that far off from that analysis. And in 2008, Barack Obama and McCain had a 7-point difference in favorability on election day, and Obama won the popular vote by 7.2%. In 2012, I think Obama was ahead by a point or so in favorability. He ended up winning by 4. That's one election where he actually was able to outperform there. And we see in chat, also on point, the party registration, which Rep showed, is insane. He showed in June, which they all favored Trump. Yeah, the party registration in Pennsylvania is looking really good. That's probably why Republicans are polling better there, especially Trump. That's why there's a lot of people. How do you apply polls to your model? Well, what I do is I just get the aggregate. So it's just I plug in the RCP aggregate, you find the swing of the popular vote, and then you have the favorabilities for Harris. I have Biden's for now just because of the fact that they haven't unlocked them on the Civics website. And we have Trump and Biden approval differences here as well. You have a demographic model, you have the polling average, and then the 2008 to 2020 results, and you have the swing from both elections, and that kind of gets you the map that I have here. And we also have the model down here that basically looks at the difference in approval ratings, and we average out the results between both models, and then we get the final result right here, where Donald Trump is performing extremely well in the Electoral College. And so I'm thinking some might want to vote for her because they want a first woman pres, or because she's not white. Well, the problem is that she's actually performing worse with women voters in our polling. I mean, she was running under Joe Biden, and she's actually losing by a bigger margin in our latest poll. She's actually losing women voters by 3, which is very interesting. And Charles for 2, thank you very much. Do you think the GOP wins the House right now? Especially with Harris, I am very confident she's going to win the House. I am very, very confident, actually, that she's going to win the House of Representatives now because of the fact that she's the main, or the Republicans are going to win the House of Representatives because she is the party nominee. I'm very confident in their chances now, to be honest. Deltis Adonis. So I'm curious, what is your prediction accuracy for your model? I know channels like Gold Crown were super accurate. I'm just curious for the accuracy of your model. Well, this is the first year that I'm starting to do this kind of stuff, and I'm actually friends with Gold Crown Politics. He's kind of the one who exposed me to a lot of the thinking about elections and how approval ratings kind of, are correlated to vote share. And over time, I kind of realized, okay, yeah, it's not going to be a close race. And I feel vindicted by the fact that Biden even dropped out in the first place. Because let's be honest, if this was going to be a close race, Biden would have stayed in. The guy has a huge ego. The only reason why he dropped out of the race is because Democrats basically were going to get him out using the 25th Amendment. That's literally why that's why he dropped out. They were going to basically force him out with the 25th Amendment, and Harris would have been president. And that would have been that. Like, it literally would have been over. Like, the Democrats would have just voted for Biden to be out through the 25th Amendment. And I was talking to a coworker today, and he told me he was going to vote Trump against Biden, but will now vote Harris because she is someone new. What in the world? That literally makes no sense. I think you're right, but I feel like you might be conflating approval and favorability. Well, not really, Omar, because it's proven to be a pretty accurate way to predict the elections. Like, the past 20 years, the approval ratings have been pretty spot on. Even in 2004, the favorability difference was also pretty accurate. I think Bush was ahead by like 3, and Bush ended up winning the popular vote by like 2.5. So like, even back then, it was pretty spot on. And it's been sort of close the past few elections. And so that's where you kind of have that. And we see here Oh, for the accuracy of the model, I mean, I've tested it back all the way to 2004, and obviously it hasn't been like 100% accurate, but it's not like, oh, it gets half the states wrong. It has like freaking Texas, Tennessee blue, or like New York red in a previous election. Like stuff like that doesn't happen. There's a few times where it gets a few states wrong. 2008, 2012, it was actually spot on. It was actually only got 2 states wrong in 2008, which was North Carolina and Indiana. And then in 2012, it actually only got Nebraska's second wrong. It actually got the whole thing correct. And on top of that, 2016 is the only time where it did not predict the winner correct, which happened to be Hillary Clinton. So, and again, the polling was really flawed that year. So that did play a factor into it. And so that was kind of a big deal for that whole mess. And so that's why you kind of saw that. Larry Denellard, Kamala has a good influence over Gen Z. No, she does not. She does not have a good influence over Gen Z. And I'm actually going to touch on this. We have a clip of her right here saying this.
What else do we know about this population, 18 through 24? They are stupid. That is why we put them in dormitories. And they have a resident assistant. They make really bad decisions.
Oh, well, that's gonna serve her well. Yeah, she's totally gonna win the young vote by 30 points, 20 points like Biden did. Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, she's not. And I guarantee you Trump's gonna bring this up during the debate. I would love to see him bring this up. It would be a pretty good attack line, to be honest with you. But she is doing horribly with them in polling data. Even liberal pollster, she's down like 20 points with them going against Trump. So I actually think Trump probably ends up really being Larry Denellard. Really, I see a lot of people be supporting her on TikTok. Yes, but TikTok and see, this is the problem. Election people think that Twitter and TikTok are real life. They are not real life. It's just not. It's TikTok. You could argue that TikTok is more real life, but TikTok and Twitter are not real life. You could have 10 million people be super vocal about it, but at the end of the day, there's not 10 million people. There's not 10 young million people. There's way more than that. So it's like, to say that is the case, that, oh, she has a big backing. I mean, yeah, the online voices for her will be louder, which is actually probably going to hurt her more with independents. But she is not going to do well. The polling's been a lot worse. Jaded McSwag. I like how Alan said if Joe drops out, they will lose. But now that he did, he says they can win. Well, he's saying that because of this key right here of the no primary contest. And she's got the majority of delegates. Apparently, this is not false. Which if this was false, he wouldn't even have to touch the other 2 keys, and Trump would just automatically win because of an uncharismatic incumbent and the military failures and the midterm gains. So that alone would have costed any Democrat the election. But since apparently she's getting all the delegates, that's going to end up being, in the safe column. That's going to go to her. But the problem with that is that they just couped the incumbent president. Like, it's not a legitimate contest. It's not a legitimate primary. Eric Wade for 20. Wow, thank you. I truly appreciate your poll analysis. Thank you. I pray that Trump will win in November, but I appreciate that Iran, China, and Russia will execute big plans prior to January 20th before Americans relocate its spine. But yeah, that will be pretty bad if they end up doing that, but we'll see. But thank you for the 20. I appreciate that. Please bring up Willie Brown. Oh, yes, that guy. Yes, Willie Brown is a person that Kamala Harris basically was infatuated with or dating in the past. I mean, it's very apparent to a lot of people that Kamala Harris has a lot of strings in Hollywood and basically did certain things to be where she is today. That's basically why she's the vice president of the United States. And the fact that she's even being nominated to be a presidential candidate, to me, is completely disgraceful. But if you look at the polling data, I mean, she's just doing worse with almost every group except older black women. That's the only group I think she's probably going to end up doing better with. But that's not going to really matter much. And you even look here, like this guy, Chuck Schumer, the grassroots campaign. Look at this. Look at this clip, guys. I want you guys to see this. I want you guys to see how fake these people are.
Now that the process is played out, from the grassroots bottom up, we are here today to throw our support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm clapping. You don't have to.
Look how cringy. You saw how cringy that is, and everyone knows. Everyone knows it. They stole the nomination from Joe Biden. Like, I'm telling you, I'm being serious.
From the grassroots bottom up, we are here today to throw our support behind Vice President.
The grassroots campaign, the grassroots movement, my ass. What a disgrace. No, it's horrible. They stole the nomination from Joe Biden. RC for 5, thank you. Can we keep the House? We're definitely keeping the House now. I would not worry about the House or Senate. I would focus on how big we can win it, because really Harris on the top of the ticket for the House is absolutely horrible. She's worse. Biden at least had the incumbency factor, appeals to white working class voters. But it's if Kamala's the face of the party for congressional districts, dude, these people are going to regret it. They are going to regret it. What do you think Trump against Kennedy debate would go? I mean, I don't know. I think honestly Kennedy would probably win that debate. And I'm saying that as I love Trump, but I think Kennedy would probably beat him. But I don't know what the everlasting effects of that would be, because I don't think he would really win over a lot of Trump people. I think he'd probably just win over a bunch of liberal voters. I think either way, Kennedy being on the debate stage is only going to hurt the Democrat nominee, not so much Trump. Trump's got his base together. His favorability is going up. And whether you like it or not, Donald Trump, compared to RFK, really even is the moderate candidate. RFK has some pretty bad policies when it comes to the Second Amendment and climate change and all this kind of stuff. Trump this cycle is actually the moderate candidate, believe it or not, when it comes to the majority of issues. You know, Harris is very far left. You even see here, she endorses, look at this clip.
Every individual who is a resident of the United States is entitled to benefits for health care services under this act. Not every individual who's a citizen, but every individual who's a resident. So you support giving universal health care, Medicare for all, to people who are in this country illegally?
Let me just be very clear about this. I am opposed to any policy that would deny in our country any human being from access to public safety, public education, or public health, period.
So basically she's going on talking about how she wants universal health care and Medicare for all for illegal immigrants. That is not, it's not hitting at all. Not really hitting. Alessandro C says, if you are confident about your election model, why don't you bet some money on the election? Because I am not of age to do so. I'm literally not of age to do it. I can't bet on elections or anything for the matter. I had leave to be liberal libertarian. I'm conservative now because the VP has to initiate it and the majority of the cabinet has to vote for it. Messy, better than to just threaten him, right? And so when we look at stuff like this, right, now to go on to the next topic, Mark Zuckerberg, let's watch this clip of Mark. This really took me by surprise when I saw this.
I've done some stuff personally in the past. I'm not planning on doing that this time. And that includes, not endorsing either of the candidates. Now, look, there's obviously a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world. The historic events over the weekend. And, on a personal note, it's, seeing Donald Trump get up after getting shot in the face and pump his fist in the air with the American flag is one of the most badass things I've ever seen in my life. But
so we see that Mark Zuckerberg, very, very interesting guy. He's the one who donated $400 million to, the Dominion the Dominion company that arguably gave Biden the presidency, through the 3 AM magic trick stuff. So he is not endorsing either candidate, not doing either you know, he's not really, you know, this is pretty interesting. And it's even to the point where, like, Officer Tatum, I don't know if you guys know who that is. He's an African-American YouTuber who tends to be pretty conservative, records and posts content all the time. And what's very interesting about him is that he actually even took pictures with Zuckerberg at the UFC, you know, one of the UFC events. And he even went to go on and talk about how he took a picture with Zuckerberg while wearing a Trump shirt, and Zuckerberg literally did not care at all. Like, he even said, oh, I asked him, and Zuckerberg was like, oh, no, I don't care. And Zuckerberg was even hanging out with, like, Dana White and all these people. Like, that seems a little really out of character, but at the end of the day, it's like, clearly something is going on. Something is going on with that 100%. Also, it seems to have been apparent to me in my Discord server that Aiden Ross publicly endorsed Donald Trump in front of millions of Gen Z viewers. Okay, well, that's the one good thing that Aiden's actually done the past year or so, besides hitting the gym more often now. But clearly there is a dynamic shift. You know, something is definitely going on. And I think it is pretty interesting with Mark Zuckerberg and his transformation. You know, clearly he is changing. And it's crazy that he's even hanging out with Dana White and things like that. Like, that to me is pretty interesting. And so now, going on to the next and final topic for this, we are currently looking into the whole MrBeast situation with MrBeast's friend. His friend goes by the name of Chris Tyson. I believe his name is Chris. And this is, you know, used to be a male, is now female, but we're going to refer to him as him, right? So basically what happened is this guy was essentially caught messaging a 14-year-old child inappropriately in 2019. And we can kind of play the videos here. Basically, all of these screenshots and text messages are being shown, and it's basically confirmed that this is, in fact, his account. You can see 200,000 followers on there. And so you see all of the text messages between these people, and they're very old, going back to like 2019. There was probably a bunch of hidden messages that are gone, but that is what's happening with that situation. And Sneeko has even gone out as far as to call out some other streamers that haven't talked about the situation, because there's another streamer, Dr. Disrespect, who, you know, basically was caught roughly doing the same thing. What's happened is, since Chris Tyson is a part of the LGBTQ community, they were basically a lot of the main streamers like Pokimane and all these people, Kai Cenat, and that whole little group of streamers that are more than likely bought out by some sort of an establishment. Well, probably not Kai, to be honest, because Kai seems like he actually rose from the, you know, actual grassroots, and Duke Dennis and all of them as well. I think they're probably not bought out, but practically all the other streamers are. Even Hassan Abi, who's in the political sphere, basically refuses to even talk about the situation. And Moist Critical, who destroys everybody and talks about everybody, has not even dedicated a video to this. Meanwhile, me, with my very little subscriber count, is basically giving enough time to this. And I'm going to explain why this is important later to you guys. And we see here, Sneeko kind of goes on to talk about the hypocrisy of other streamers, and I'm going to go ahead and play the clip for you guys.
Pokemon says, I don't know all the details regarding the Chris situation, but I want to make it clear, any inappropriate behavior towards minors is unacceptable regardless of who you are. It's the same people you see this as an opportunity to attack the trans community. What? Satan runs the industry and Pokemon is proof. Chris gets caught being a pedophile, and she defends the trans community instead of disavowing Chris. These are the standards of every streamer right now. They care more about the demonic trans ideology than kids getting groomed. That's proof in front of your face. It took her that long to say that too. So please don't view it that way. It doesn't affect trans people. I don't know all the details. Pokemon, you didn't know any of the details of Dr. Disrespect before you said, ew, disgusting, terrible person. His kids are gonna need therapy. Pokemon.
Yeah. So it's very obvious that there is a sort of bias when it comes to this kind of stuff. And we even see over here, you know, a former employee, even, I'm actually going to play the clip for you guys, but even a former employee kind of goes over this. I'm going to mute the first couple seconds because Kendrick's Not Like Us was playing, which I thought was a pretty funny addition to the video. But we are going to play this, video so you guys can hear what this former MrBeast employee does actually have to say.
At MrBeast studio right now. Here's a cornfield. I'll explain that tomorrow.
I am seeing the chat. It said people are saying that Moist did make a video. I mean, I'm gonna have to go check that out because that must have came out while I was streaming. Because as far as I know, he hadn't posted anything.
I've just been driving by looking to see, is there an FBI raid going on? What's happening? My name's Dawson. I worked at MrBeast from February to May of this year, 2024. Chris is the tip of the iceberg. And when Jake the Viking says MrBeast knew, yeah, MrBeast knew. I heard many times that Ava, Chris Tyson, is a major liability, but they can't get rid of her because she's already threatened legal action and she knows too much. And when all this information comes out about everything that she knew, everything other people know, I promise you on everything MrBeast has done. Amazon, if you can get your money back, get your money back.
So that is a pretty powerful statement. And this is somebody that, basically is a former employee and basically kind of confirmed it by showing that they have a non-disclosure agreement from MrBeast. So that is very, very interesting. And so now when we go down here, we see people commenting on this, basically saying, oh my God, there's no way. But the whole point about this is that MrBeast has expressed presidential aspirations. He said, multiple times, not like Jake Paul or Logan who said, one time, we'll do it. No, he's talked about this at length, what he would do, what party he would run in as an independent candidate, would basically talk about, appeasing both sides of the political spectrum, compromising and, doing certain stuff to get for the better of the country. But clearly, if this guy's around these kind of people, and if he really knew about this is somebody that cannot become president of the United States. I mean, forget it. She can't become president of the United States. But I'm talking about MrBeast in general, because if he's really controlled by these elitist systems that allow this kind of behavior and kind of conform to the LGBT community this way, I think it's disgraceful for somebody like this to even be able to run for U.S. president. And so that is kind of the whole situation with that and what's going on with that as well. And so now we go over here, and basically those were all the topics for the stream. If you guys have any other questions that you want me to answer, you guys can super chat it as well if you want me to get to it first. But I'm basically going to look at chat now. We're going to kind of just be chilling here really quick before I do end the stream. And so, guys, we're living in crazy times. Donald Trump is now going against Kamala Harris for the presidency. It's actually insane what is going on right now in terms of political, content, in terms of what's going on politically around the world. If Kamala Harris were to become the president, I would be scared. I would generally be terrified for the United States if she became president. It's not because she's a female. There's a few female people that I would vote for. I would vote for Carrie Lake. I would vote for Nancy Mace. I would vote for, if there was a female candidate that was there, that was good at their job, that I felt like was good on the issues, I would vote for them. And if I felt like they would be able to do a good job with foreign policy, I would vote for them. But the two nominees they've ran are just not it, and they're backed by the big corporate party that the Democrats now are. And it's like, I see Alessandro, does the VP move the needle? Not necessarily. I really don't think that's going to be the case. Kaboom, bruh, On Point Politics, thoughts on Joy Reid saying black people will look weird if they don't support Harris? Again, there they go with the race baiting again. It's just like, people are not going to fall for that this time. People are just not. Black males especially are really not going to fall for that now. This whole, 2016 energy with Hillary Clinton doing well with African Americans, it is not going to pan out well for them at all. I think, honestly, the best case scenario for Donald Trump this election, if I had to map out a best case scenario for him, and this is if everything went right for him, if the debate goes bad for Harris, if everything were to just go completely wrong, I would say that Trump's best case scenario probably is something akin to this. It would more than likely him getting about 429 possibly. That New York scenario could potentially happen, but something like this would be his best case. Now, for Kamala Harris, I mean, we see polls where she's leading by about 4. So that's kind of interesting to see her leading by that much. And if that were to really be the case, I mean, there would be a lot of implications for her politically. I think her best case scenario in this election cycle, more than likely, is probably going to possibly be she would get all of the deep blue states, and effectively these would be the toss-up states once again. And so now Wisconsin, I think, would go. I think the Rust Belt, no matter what, goes red. I think the 3 swing states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, they go red 100% no matter what, because she has no Rust Belt appeal, period. Now, I think Nevada, with the whole, culinary workers for unions thing, I think that's really going to solidify that state for Donald Trump. And that already gets him across the finish line, to be honest. I mean, that already gets him across 270 electoral college votes. That just leaves Arizona and Georgia. Now, Georgia, I think, yes, in, some of the suburbs, where you have an older black population, you may see Harris do better. But in inner city Fulton County and in the rural areas, I think she's going to underperform there. That gives her the state, or gives Georgia to Trump. And then with Arizona, it's like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of McCain-esque type Republicans there, but they don't like Harris either. I would say in an ultimate best case scenario for Harris, she maybe gets Arizona, but it would be really, really close. Like, it would be so competitive that I don't even know. Like, it would be a razor thin margin. Like, that one in a best case scenario for Harris could go either way. But I would say maybe in a best case scenario for Harris, maybe Biden ends up, or Harris barely gets the state of Arizona. But as of right now, this would be her best case scenario, in my opinion. Donald Trump would get 301 to Kamala Harris getting 237. And you notice Donald Trump in his worst and best case scenario doesn't even get under 300 electoral votes. That really speaks to the, really big mounted difference. Patricio Vasquez says, bro, you should do a prediction of MrBeast / ISO Speed. I guess I could do that really quick just for funsies, just to see how that would look. I mean, it would be kind of funny, to be honest, if I were to actually do that. I mean, ISO Speed is involved with a lot of people too, so it wouldn't really look good. I would assume he'd be the Democrat candidate. MrBeast would more than likely be the Republican candidate. ISO Speed was born, I believe, in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's a more Democrat area. MrBeast was born in Greenville, North Carolina. He even went to like a Christian school. So I'm going to go ahead and do this like really quick just to kind of play around with the idea of it. And then the stream will pretty much be over. But please stay tuned because I want to see you guys. I want to play around with this idea because I think it would actually be kind of funny. Do you think he will have the Trump keys win by November? Probably not. I mean, he's not flipping third parties. He's like really budging. He's really, really budging for them to not flip. So I don't know. I mean, if he doesn't, he's going to get it wrong. But I would say if it's MrBeast and ISO Speed, I mean, it would be interesting because you would probably get a polarized electorate. Like, at the end of the day, I think Speed with Democrat voters, I don't think he would like do well enough to hold the presidency, to be honest. And you would probably see a lot of Hispanic voters probably break even. You'd see a lot of African Americans obviously vote for Speed, but MrBeast would just do really good with white voters. And so I think that would hurt him in places like Georgia and North Carolina. I think MrBeast being kind of a philanthropist pretty much isn't really so much him being a philanthropist may appeal to some white working class voters, so that would probably get him the Rust Belt. I honestly think that MrBeast probably even wins Minnesota, to be honest, and probably gets close in Colorado. And I think in this scenario, Colorado would actually vote to the left of New Mexico. Like, I don't know. I think it would actually vote to the right of New Mexico just because of how bad ISO Speed would probably do with white voters. You'd even see Arizona go lean Republican. Nevada, that would probably be lean Republican as well. Or maybe it would probably be lean. Illinois would be close. Virginia probably even flips to MrBeast. You probably even see a state like New Hampshire and even Maine at large possibly even vote pretty heavily Republican. And I even think, to be honest with you, Even places like Connecticut, that would get close. I could possibly even see New York potentially getting competitive, and I think that Delaware in this scenario could even flip to Beast just because of how bad, again, Show Speed would do with that kind of white voter. And I think New Jersey would be close, but I think Speed would probably like narrowly win it. And then you would have Hawaii probably get under 15. So basically, he would probably, MrBeast would more than likely end up winning the election fairly easily. I think that he would pretty much kill IShowSpeed in a general election matchup. So that's roughly what I would see. According to Civics, Trump only has a -7 favorable among independents versus 47 for Harris. Wait, did you, wait, did they open up the crosstabs for Harris? Wait, did they open up the crosstabs already? Hold on, let me see this. How did you check that she had a 47% approval rating with indies? Because last time I checked, you can't really check. It wasn't available for you to check by anything. Let me go ahead and look this up because I just looked at it today and I did not see anything. Oh, all right. Okay, this is perfect. So they finally opened these up. They do not have it by state though, which is kind of annoying, but hopefully they start tracking it by state really soon. So I am going to be implementing this 100% into my election predictions. So we said Ben Cynics for 5. Thank you very much for the 5. According to Siri, okay, yeah, this is the same one I read. Jason Christie for 5. In your last video, Catholic should have been in huge air quotes. Yes, Jason, I understand that should be in air quotes, but again, Biden did arguably get a pretty big bump for that. Okay, they finally opened these up. These were usually locked for me before. Hopefully they start tracking it by state because that's going to help out quite a bit when it comes to my predictions. So if we look at Trump, right, because Trump on Civics, I mean, let's go ahead and check Donald Trump's favorable ratings. We're going to be able to go ahead and look at this. I mean, he's getting close to being, in the mid 40s. And when it comes to that, I mean, Harris is down by a lot with some of these voters. I mean, with Trump has a basically equal favorable rating with Harris when it comes to, 18 to 34-year-olds with 35 to 49-year-olds. I mean, Trump has a 5-point advantage there. We have 50 to 64. Trump at 48, Harris at 36, 12-point advantage, and Trump is at 49% with plus 65. And you would have Harris at 39%. You have non-college grads at 35% approval for Harris. Trump is at 44. College graduates, Trump is at 42%. Harris is at 35. So Trump actually has a higher favorable with college graduates than even Harris does. And Trump's favorable with postgraduates is only a little bit behind Harris. That is not good for Harris. Trump is at a 49% favorability rating with male voters. Harris is at just 29 points. That is a huge discrepancy. That is really bad. Females at 41%. Donald Trump is at 36, only a 5-point difference. We have Trump here. Or Harris, 77% of Democrat voters. That is actually pretty crazy. That is a horribly low favorability rating. Even if we look at Trump, he's at 3, but it's like, that is bad. Trump has a higher favorability rating in his own party. Only 2% of Republicans support Harris and 21% of independents support Harris. Trump is at 43 with independents. So clearly there is a really, really, really bad discrepancy when it comes to Trump and Harris right now. If we were to plug that into like a national sample, this would be horrible. This would not be good, in my opinion. I think this would be horrible. Can we track her approval rating back to 2020? Yeah, we can. We can go back. We can actually go back to 2020. I want to see what happens when you plug these in, because I guarantee you she's going to have horrible numbers. Let's do 18 to 34 first, just to see what would happen. So Trump on election day 2020 basically had a 31% favorable. So that's about there with 18 to 34. Harris on that day was basically, if we look there, 45. So she was ahead by 14 points there. So that's impressive for Harris enough. But Harris now is at 32%. Trump is also at 32%. So that's tied. So she'd be up with that group by about 10 points. If we look at 30 to 44-year-olds, or like 35 to 49, we see Trump at 40%, Harris at 35%. That's a 5-point advantage. In 2020, we see her, I think, at about 47%. Trump would be at 40, so that's a 7-point differential. So Trump is up by 6 points with that group. Charts are for 2. Do a battleground map for the 2030s and 40s. I mean, I could do that as well after this, maybe. So that's a 6-point win with that group. That's already bad enough. 45 to 64. Let's look at the 2020 sample. If we were to go ahead and check that out, I wonder how that would go, because that is going to be interesting to see how that works out. Harris with this demographic would be, let's see where it is, would be 42%. Donald Trump would be at 50. Would be at 50%. So that's an 8-point difference in 2020. Now he's at 48 and she's at 30. That's a 12-point difference. So he's up by 5 with that group. So that's a 4-point improvement from the last cycle. And then we have right now with 65 plus, Trump is at 49. Harris is at 39%. So that's a 10-point spread there. So that's 15 points for now. But when we apply this, it may be a little bit different. Harris would be at 44% with this group. Donald Trump in 2020 would have been at about 50. So that's a 6-point differential. So he'd be ahead by 9. So it shows him ahead by 3.5 in the popular vote, which is roughly what the third-party aggregate's actually showing right now. So that's pretty interesting. But again, this only factors in the head-to-head performance. So Donald Trump's popular vote victory would probably be higher. With college or let's do non-college graduates first, actually, because this is going to be pretty simple to do. With non-college graduates, Trump is at 44, Harris is at 35, so that's a 9-point win with non-college. And Donald Trump, let's see, Harris would have been at 44 and Trump would have been at 44 as well. So they're tied. So that's actually undersampling them. So he would be ahead by 11 with that group. And then with college educated voters, we got to basically average out the results here. So Trump now, or we see Harris at 35, 38. So that's like 36 and a half. It's like 30. What would be the in between of those two? Hold on. 38 plus 35 divided by 2 is 36.5. Donald Trump between these two would be at 42 and 35. That would roughly be 42 and 35 divided by 2. That's 38. So when you round it out, 39 minus 37. So so Harris is ahead by 2 with these voters this year. And then now when it comes to last time, Harris was at 50% with these voters. Trump was at 43% beforehand with college grads. 43%, 38%, so 43 plus 38 divided by 2 is 40.5. And then Harris with these voters, she was at 50 44. So 44 plus 50 divided by 2, that's 47. So she had a 6-point differential. So now she's up by about 8 points with those voters according to this spread. And then now with men voters, this is where I'm curious to see the spread end up roughly being. So this is where I'm kind of curious. So we have, okay, Trump's up 49 points with 49% 20. So that's a 20-point differential there. That boosts him up to 5 points in that matchup. And then we go ahead and look at the 2020 sample. We're going to go ahead and see Harris was at 37% with these voters. Trump on that same day was at about 50. That's a 13-point differential. So that's going to underestimate the male vote. So now it's roughly tied. With women voters, we go ahead and look this up. We're going to see that Harris with female or Harris with female voters in 2020 was at 51%. Trump was at 37. That is like that's a bad differential. That is really, really bad. So minus 14. And then now if we look at the difference, Harris is at 41 and Trump is now at 36. So that's like a 5-point difference. So she'd be up with 6 points. So that's a 4-point lead for Trump in the popular vote when you model it out by gender. And then when we do it by racial demographics, this is the part that's going to interest me the most. So if we go to white voters, we're going to see, I think it's going to be a pretty big difference, to be honest. Okay, here we go. So Trump is at 50. Harris is at 28%. Dude, that is a really bad difference. That is 22 points. That is horrible. Wow, that's bad. That's really bad. I wonder what the spread is going to be here. She was at 36. Trump was at 52. That is 16, and that's not that off from what it actually was. So he's going to be up by 23. That already boosted it to being a tied popular vote matchup with black voters. Let's go ahead and see that. So Trump right now is at 9%. Harris is at 71. That's not really great either. That's a 62-point lead right there. That's not necessarily great either. And if we look at the 2020 sample, Harris was at 80 and Trump was at about 73. So she's up 64%. Now it's about a 1-point lead. The ratings are on civics.com. That's where that is. And if we go to Hispanics, if we see over here, we're going to go ahead and switch over to Hispanic voters. Trump is at 34% with Hispanics, and Harris is at 41. So she actually has a higher favorable, which is kind of weird to me. So 7-point difference with those voters. And then we go to 2020 sample. So Harris was at 56% with this group. Donald Trump was at 29%. So that's definitely going to overstate Democrat support with Hispanics. Or actually it doesn't. It actually did not. So now 13, so 3.27. And with the other vote, I'm curious to see what this shows as well. I can't wait till they break it down by state, because that's going to be a lot better. Oh, wow. She's only up on him by a point. That is really bad. That is not good. And then we see in 2020, she had a 50% favorability to 35. So it was like a 15-point spread. So now we see that Trump is basically up on average based on favorability ratings, and comparing it to the 2020 sample, he'd be up by 3.9%. So basically he'd be up by 4 points. But when you factor in third parties, he could be up anywhere by 4 to 7 points. So if we were to basically write that out on an electoral map, if Donald Trump is going to be up in the popular vote by about 4 points, then you may see Kamala Harris probably take states like Minnesota. You may see states like Virginia be blue. If Trump is up by 7, then you're going to see those states more than likely still be in the Republican column. But more than likely, if you take the median of that, which would be about 5.5 points, you would see Minnesota probably be lean Democrat. Iowa, Ohio, these would all still be safe. North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, these would roughly be in the likely Republican column at that point. And we would also go to California being safe, Washington, Oregon, Colorado, Illinois, Alaska. I think New Mexico would probably be lean Republican, even if the popular vote was plus 5.5, because I expect the state to probably trend to the right of the nation. And I think Virginia at this point in time may probably be like tilt Democrat at that point. It would probably be in the tilt Democrat column. And then you would see states like New Hampshire and Maine at large be in that column. Nebraska is second, I think would be lean Republican already. And so at that point in time, if Donald Trump is winning the popular vote by 5.5, which would basically be the most likely outcome based on the favorability difference and the third party, kind of spread, this is the result you would be looking at. Donald Trump would get 318 electoral college votes to Kamala Harris's 220 electoral college votes. So that's roughly what you would be looking at. Alec Prentice for 5, thank you. What do you think of the Reuters poll that has Harris leading Trump 44 to 42? Redigo said it was garbage online poll. Well, the reason why he's saying that is because their Democrat samples are really high, but the pollsters are not weighing by party, and they're not being honest about the fact that there's a big response bias now that Harris is a new candidate. And so they're not weighing it properly to get a better party sample size. Like, usually the electorate is like tied in terms of voter registration, and then independents will make up the majority of the electorate. And so then now, if you had Democrats being 38% of voters and Republicans being 28%, and independents being like 34, clearly that's a bad sample because you're oversampling Democrats by a lot, but they're treating that as that's going to be the actual electorate. And so that's why you see polls with Harris being ahead. If they actually weighed by party the correct way, they wouldn't have Harris up. Gideon McDowell for 5 says, thank you for all your efforts to educate and inform us. Thank you much. I greatly appreciate the super chat, my friend. So this is what a 5.5 point popular vote victory would look like. Maybe Virginia would possibly flip. I mean, it depends. If Glenn Youngkin's kind of trending the state to the right, it would depend on certain demographics. She probably actually does maybe lose the state because Donald Trump would probably perform better with... I'm in a Twitter chat with Tim Scott, Polymarket, MGT, Harry Simpson, and wait, what? Tester, what are you talking about? So you clearly see here that because Harris does worse with white voters, maybe states like Maine at large and New Hampshire possibly go into a certain column. You may actually see these states possibly move to the right now that Donald Trump is doing better with white voters against Harris. So effectively, this would pretty much be the battleground map. But I think that if Donald Trump wins the popular vote by 5.5, you'd probably still see Minnesota be blue at this point in time. So this is roughly what the battleground map would look like if those approval rating, crossovers basically end up being accurate. Now, another way we could actually do it is doing it by the Biden sample. For the 2020 sample, instead of doing it by this, we could do it by the Biden sample. So we could look at it that way and see what the difference would be. So let's go ahead and look at that. That would be pretty interesting to look at. So again, for the same age group, Joe Biden would be at about 40. Sorry guys, I received a phone call really quick. I'm back. So let's go ahead and see this. This might actually be pretty interesting. So Biden was at 41 Trump was at 34%. So Biden was up by like, what was he at? 41, and then Trump was 34. So that's like a 7-point difference. So clearly that's going to be a huge underestimation. So probably now, you may probably see Harris actually do. You may actually see Harris do a little bit better when we do it by the 2020 samples. We'll see. So if we go back to 35 to 49. Oh wait, no, these were not his. I don't know why did I do it like that. No, I did it the wrong way. Hold on, I gotta go back. 2020, Biden was at 41. Biden was at, or Trump was at 31. Okay, so that's like a 10-point spread. Okay, it's like a 10-point spread basically. And then now with 30 to 44, Trump was at 40. Biden was at literally at 46. Trump was at 40. So that was a 6-point difference. So that ends up being spot on. So Trump is up 5 now. And then Trump, this group here, Leon Scott for 2. Okay, yeah, no, I'm not reading that out loud. Thanks for the 2 though. 2020, Trump is up 50 to 44. So that's a 6-point difference. So now Trump's up 7, and then with 65 plus in 2020, you have Trump at 50. And Biden is at 44. So that's a 6-point spread. So then you have him up 9. So then about 3.4%, give or take. And then college, it's that same thing again. I honestly don't feel like going through that. Male, Trump would be up 50. Okay, so, all right. Oh, wow, that is really bad. 2020... on election day, 57%. Biden was at 38. That's a 19-point difference. Wow, that is like huge. Yeah, so clearly doing it with the Harris samples in favorability, maybe a better accurate way of going about it. If you break it down by race, she actually loses really badly when it comes to this. So that's pretty interesting. Omar, the only reason why I'm doing this now on stream is because this was just like publicly made available. Like the Harris crosstabs on here were just made favorable like right now, and I wanted you guys to see kind of how I break things down and kind of how I get an idea of how things are gonna end up. So clearly we see that now these were locked beforehand, so I wasn't able to access this. Hopefully they start breaking it down by state, so I can finally go ahead and add that to my model. But anyways, guys, that's pretty much it for this video and the live stream. Thank you for everybody who tuned in. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next live.